The dreaded worded problem. So, as part of my revision class for Year 11s, I'm going to focus on a lot of worded questions because these tend to be the areas where students struggle. They look at a question, they get a bit overwhelmed with the information in it, not sure how to start it, and hopefully I'm just going to give a few tips about how it could be done. So the first thing I always suggest is, first of all, I never use a highlighter because I know some students use a highlighter, some don't. Some schools allow it, some don't. So what I tend to do is I just use a pen and just underline and bold things where necessary. So first thing I ever do when I'm looking at a question like this, I always try and tell students is, now I will say that this is not like a rule that has to be done or anything like that, but it's a way that potentially could make your answers look clearer. So first thing I always do is I always just divide my answer into just two sections. So what I do is I just draw a line roughly down the side of the page. Now it depends how big students write and things like that, but roughly speaking, that's what I do. So two reasons for that. The first one is if a student's doing an answer, usually they kind of work across the page, and if they make a mistake, they tend to get a little bit panicked or annoyed and kind of scribble it out, and then they've not got loads and loads of room, and it's not overly clear what they've done and how they've changed it. Okay, that's the first thing. So it forces students to do a version here of their answer, and then if they do make a mistake, they've still got this space to do a completely clean answer without any crossing out and things like that. So, and the other thing which is probably quite important, particularly non-calculator question, is it forces students to work down the page rather than across. So when they're doing calculations, column method for multiplication, addition, etc., it just means that they're forced to work down, which is a much better way of working usually. Also, some schools they insist that their students split their page in half immediately, fold the page in half. So some students are actually used to, the first thing they do when they open up the A4 book is they fold the page in half, which forces them basically to work completely down the page and then start again up here, so they're more used to it. So if I'm looking at a question like this, what I will do is I will look at it and I will immediately just really take your time, okay? Because it's very, very unlikely you'll run out of time in an exam, and roughly speaking, you got 4 marks for this one, and it's crossover a question, so you know it's a fair chunk of marks really. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at this top line and do it in order. So we've got Gavin, Harry and Isabel each earn the same monthly salary. Now you've got two choices. You could either have kind of skim read it, what roughly you've got to do, or you can literally just look at this as the first line and pick out anything you think is going to be important later on in the question. So the first thing I'm going to think is I've got 3 people and they're all different, and they're all different letters. Now usually when we're looking at this, the first thing that might spring to mind is it could be something algebra based where you've got 3 letters. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out the important words, so they each earn. So I know it's something to do with how much they earn, so it's to do with money. And I know that in maths, earn is to do with money, so I might think it's cash or something like that. And it's the same, so that's same. Now this is really important. If I see the word same, I'm going to think to myself, in maths, we look at that as being equal. So I'm going to put an equal sign because that's going to be something important. And then I've got salary, which is, most people know that it's how much you earn, okay? So then I might go over here and I'll say, well, do you know what? These 3 people, I'm just going to put an equals between them all. So that means that they're all earning the same, whatever that is. Now, later on in the question, it might tell you how much they earn. It might say that Gavin earns half of what Harry does, or etc., etc. But at this point, that's what we know from that particular line. So the next stage, each month. Now I'm going to write down underline each month. Now I'm going to make a note there of 12 because it could well be every month you earn a certain amount, so how much you earn in a year, or it could also be, if it's to do with month, it could be days in a month, because I've seen questions like that before where it might say how much do you earn in July or June and things, so students need to know how many days are in a month. Now we've got 3 different things happening. Now you can see the three categories, and you've got Gavin. So it goes back to it's in order again, so it goes back to the first person up on the top line. It says Gavin saved 28% of his salary. So I'm just going to underline the word save because it's bold, so I know it's going to be fairly important. And he spends the rest. Now that's going to be a crucial bit. So this is the first bit of numbers and calculations we've got. He saved 28%, he spends the rest. Now this is where annotation comes in, because there's only 2 things that can happen when you get cash. You either just save it, or you just keep it in your bank or whatever, or you spend it. That's the 2 solutions. Most students are aware that 100% is the main percentage you usually work with. So if I think that 100% has got to be, now I could put lots of different ways of putting this, but if I just say that 100% is going to be your total, I know that you save 28%, which means whatever's left is how much you spend. So therefore, I'm just going to put there, spend. Now just be careful, in a real test, usually around the border you see do not write in this area. That's because the exam papers are scanned and they're marked on screen by people, and they kind of chop off the edges around the side. So just be careful of that. But I'm just going to for ease, that would probably be okay, to be fair, just before the border. So spends the rest of his salary, so we've got 72%. That actually could give you 1 mark so far, depending on the mark scheme, but that just on its own now could give you 1%. So now I'm going to do the same thing. Now this is crucial now, just to read this really, really carefully, because look at the hint that the exam's given you. You've got the word bold, saves is in bold, and you've got the word saves again in bold. But what you've got to spot this time is they're not in the same order. So this time the spends is actually the first thing. So if I think to myself, well, do you know what? If he spends 3/4, most students will probably spot that he has to save the rest, which means it's a quarter, and that gives us 1 whole one. So this time it's the quarter, which is how much he saves. So we can annotate this further if we wanted to, and we could put how much we save and spend in each time. But if I just make it clear that this time is saves, and then that becomes crucial further down the question. So now if I go to this one, the amount. Now notice the word amount, so it's changed slightly. The amount, and we've got these dots in the middle, which is the ratio. So we've got the amount she saves, so I'm going to put saves first and then spends second. And most students know 3 out of 7 is a total of 10, so that means that she saves 3 out of 10 and she spends 7 out of 10. Okay, now work out who saves the most of that, who saves the most. So remember, we're looking for this word saves. We've got it twice there in bold, and we've got it here as well. You must show. Now this is very, very important, because a lot of students, or some students, think that because you've got basically 3 choices, you could actually take a guess and get it correct. But it's not about getting it correct, because actually you could actually get it incorrect but still get maybe 3 out of 4 marks down here. But you could also get the person right and get 0 marks, because you can't just take a guess at which person it is, and even if it's the right answer, you need to actually show how you get your answer. That's the important bit. So the important thing is, I'm going to try and make the examiner's life as easy as possible by just really, really clearly going through this answer. So at this point I might well have about 2 marks, because depending on the mark scheme, I can see I've worked out something there, and I've got it into the same kind of order, which is what I'm looking for. So if I now go, and I'm just going to put Gavin. Now I always tend to use an arrow instead of an equals, but that doesn't really matter. So we've got Gavin. Now what we're going to do with Gavin is we're going to say that first of all we're going to split what he gets, what he earns, into saves and spends. Now what's going to happen is, at this point, you've got to spot that actually the one thing that's missing from this entire question is an actual amount of money. Now most students, when they get to this point, they do know that when you don't have an amount of money, use an easy number. So it could be maybe 10, or it could be 20, it could be 50. In this case, I think the easiest number to work with would be 100. Now you could use 1,000, you could use 50 if you wanted to, but I think 100 is probably the easiest number. So I'm just going to think that all of them earn £100, and I'm going to work from there. So if I look at Gavin now, he saved 28%. Most students know the percentages out of 100, so that would just simply be he saved £28 and he saves the rest, which is 72. Okay, now this is the tricky part. We go to Harry now. Now the tricky part with Harry is not particularly the calculation, it's about the order. So he spends 3/4. Now most students, the biggest mistake is they just assume it's going to be there, but if you notice, it spends this time over here and he saves the rest. Now it's all about just picking out crucial parts of the information. Now if he spends 3/4 and he saves a quarter is an easier one to work out, and most students will know that a quarter is just half and half again. That's what they'll say. So if I just think about saving, which is a quarter, and if I look at it being 100, if I do half and half again of 100, he's going to save £25 this time, because that's a quarter. So that means we don't need to work out 3/4 because what we know at this point is it has to be 75 because it's got to add up to 100. So now we move on to Isabel in the same way, and this time we've got these two fractions, 3/10 and 7/10. Now once again, most students will probably know 1/10 is divided by 10, so we get £10, and then 3/10 would be £30, but once again it's the save first this time, okay? So she's going to earn save 30, and she's going to spend the rest, which is 70. Now at this point we've completely answered that question, because what we've done is we've taken apart all the information, we've got it all coherently, and we've got it all that can be completely compared across the board. Now there's different ways you can do it. You can show other aspects of working out. I mean, one idea could be, if you're confident with your answer here, you could really reinforce your answer by over here maybe showing what your calculations are to get these. So it could be a quarter is half and half again. It could here be 1/10 equals 10, 3/10 equals 30, etc. So you've got another bit of space there if you need to, but that will give you the answer. Now the only thing is, and this is another real area where students fall down, is they do not conclude their answer. Now you must show how you get your answer. So you've got your answer, you've shown it, but what you haven't shown is which person. So although it's obvious which person saves most, you still need to put it. So if I just put down Isabel saves the most. Now that will be exactly the same if a student, because some students will not have used an amount of money. Some students would have used 1,000, 500, but actually it's still showing the same thing. It's still showing that she will save more no matter what you do. You could back this question up a little bit by putting percentages down, but that would actually just prove it, because all you've done there is you've just shown that will work for any amount of money and she will end up saving the most. Okay, thank you.